Most of us live under a constant, silent pressure, a monolithic stack of data, complex technology, and life choices that feel too large to hold. When we face a problem of this scale, the brain has a predictable reaction. It panics, it delays, and eventually it begins to skim. We start moving through our days without actually seeing the details. This creates a dangerous habit of reacting only to the surface. We respond to the immediate noise without ever looking at the logic that generated the sound in the first place. Treating the world as an incomprehensible black box doesn't just make life harder, it quietly removes our ability to change the outcome. Breaking that paralysis requires a shift in focus. You have to stop looking at the whole and start isolating the parts. This is the practice of chunking, stripping away the secondary noise until you are left with a few fundamental truths that you can actually work with. It starts with a deliberate pause to separate the layers of a single moment. First, you isolate the external facts, what is actually happening, objectively, regardless of how you feel about it. Next, you name the internal reaction. What specific pressure or fear is the situation triggering in your mind right now? Finally, you identify the core value that needs to be protected. What is the one thing that cannot be compromised in your response? When you divide a monster into these three specific parts, it stops being an overwhelming force and becomes a series of problems you can actually solve. This reveals that the most significant fork in the road is rarely a single sudden event. Every choice is built from four specific layers: what you pay attention to, the weight you give that information, the action you take, and the ripple of the consequence. If we don't look at these microscopic steps, we end up repeating the same patterns while wondering why our circumstances never change. And this logic, the idea that complexity is just a collection of simple, repeatable mechanisms, is exactly how we should look at the systems we build, including artificial intelligence. Whether a personal decision or a global algorithm, complexity is always built from observable, smaller parts. To understand AI, we have to shatter the myth that it is a mysterious, thinking machine and look at the structure underneath. Beneath the surface, it is a system of structured mathematics designed to identify patterns in data. Information is stored in vectors, transformed by matrices, and evaluated through probability. The system learns through gradient descent, measuring error and sending a signal backward to adjust weights. This mechanic mirrors how we refine habits. We try, miss, measure the gap, and adjust. A mathematical weight or a repeated behavior is essentially a record of these adjustments. When we see the shared logic of iterative correction, the magic of the machine disappears, leaving us with a tool we can actually understand and guide. Once the mechanics are clear, we have to look at how we actually apply them. Here, we separate the two dimensions of intelligence. First, the outer path. It is defined by efficiency, speed, and processing massive data to reach a visible goal. But there is also the inner path, the human side, handling value, emotion, and long-term consequence. A machine can be optimized to perform a task perfectly, but it cannot understand why that task matters to a person. It can simulate a tone, but it cannot experience empathy. Without the human element to provide a why, mechanical speed is just movement without a destination. Living effectively in this environment requires us to act as the architects of our own systems. We start by unlearning, refusing to accept jargon or complexity as a reason to stop asking questions. We deconstruct, breaking every large, intimidating problem down into its smallest, most truthful parts. We iterate, using feedback to make small, honest repairs to our methods, just as we would adjust a mathematical model. And finally, we judge, applying human value to ensure that the speed of our tools is serving a purpose we actually care about. As technology begins to answer our questions faster, our real agency lies in our ability to ask better ones. The value of any system isn't found in the logic of the build, but in the intention of the person who holds the compass.